Hello and welcome to our Energy Connect studio at COP28. I'm delighted to be joined by Ziad Hussami, CEO of Mruna. Thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, to start off, could you just tell me a bit more about what you're doing here at COP28 and more about your company?
Sure. So we are part of the alumni of the Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund, and we were selected among a group of startups to host our booth here and to share about our product called BiomeWeb, which is a nature-based sanitation infrastructure solution.
Very interesting. And when you're going to have your booth up, it's next week, I think.
Yeah, so next week we'll be up and we'll be here and talking to passerbys and discussing how we can integrate a more circular and nature-based infrastructure to help us meet the SDGs.
That's interesting. And you told me that in 2020, the Global Infrastructure Hub G20 initiative crowned you as the global winner of the Infra Challenge. Can you tell me a bit more about why you think you were selected? And then I want to hear more about it.
Sure. So, initially my background is in urban planning. And initially I was a consultant here working on master planning new communities. And through that work, I saw that, to be sustainable, you got to start looking at infrastructure and things that are below the ground before even looking at the stuff that you can see with your eye above the ground that is actually more fun to do and work on. And that took me to actually the informal settlements, refugee camps in Lebanon, where with some funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they were looking at innovation in that setting. And we created a solution that we called BiomeWeb. And it's a nature-based solution, which is, it's supposed to be resilient. Mruna is a transliteration of the Arabic word for resilience. And, in an area where you have low power, you have people who, they have other priorities other than taking care of your system. So it had to be resilient and it had to work for that areas. So bringing it back to the GI Hub, which is a G20 initiative, and they focus on partnerships and private sector investments in infrastructure. We were competing with companies from all over the world, some established multinationals.
Wow. And,
I think the difference for us is that, a lot of sometimes solutions, they look at doing business as usual more efficiently. And, perhaps AI or whatever to create infrastructure the way we've been creating it, but faster, or making it more somehow sustainable. But we looked at a practical, easy to develop, it's not fancy solutions that you can implement straight away and that people can adopt throughout the world. And I think that's why we're selected.
That's really interesting. And
yeah.
You're talking about under the ground. How important is water and what sort of new ways or challenges are you coming up with water in the urban setting?
Yeah. It's actually really exciting to be here speaking on this subject because I was a sustainability consultant on this very project when it was still a desert. And, nothing out here. They're digging up, those like snakes and even old graves. And just sitting here during the project, I saw how much work went into putting in sanitation infrastructure. And it's super expensive. And, we can perhaps look at ways to reimagine how we do infrastructure. And here, water is energy because of, we spend a lot of energy on desalination. You're looking at about, 13 kilograms of carbon per cubic meter. So we wanted to look at ways to maximize reuse to save the amount of energy that has to go into desalination.
Yes, and how important then is the private sector in this situation?
Yeah, so I think the private sector globally needs to have a role in this. Here, I think one of the reasons why their infrastructure is so, state of the art and fantastic is that a lot of them have been privatized. And they're ready to, adopt new technologies and to improve and to have great service. Mm-hmm. And, there's places where, like in Lebanon, where, somebody needs to pick up where the public sector has very terribly left off. And, doing that at bite size and adopting innovation will be very helpful.
Yes. And, and touching on innovation, what innovative new designs do you think can influence the industry?
Right. So again, when it comes down to innovation, it's not new high-tech products per se, right? It's about an innovative approach and reimagining how we address this resource. Wastewater is the only water resource that grows every year. Water resource that grows every year. So we need to find ways to, maximize its reuse so we can deal with, climate adaptation and increase resilience. So, for us, there is, in places like Lebanon, they've installed big municipal sanitation infrastructure, which 80% of your cost is in the network. So they'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony, and then it never sees a day of operation because A, they don't have the power, B, they don't have the money to connect it, and C, you need also very specialized people to work it. And where our approach is let's look at redesigning infrastructure in a way where we use nature-based solutions, localized areas, and maximize reuse. And with something perhaps emerging technologies would be generative design. And with generative design, that will help us to create multiple scenarios for planning infrastructure in the future, which looks at several key performance indicators, not just cost. How quickly can you build it? How much does it increase your resilience? How much more sustainable can you be?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Ziad, that really interesting to hear all that, and I wish you all the best for your time at COP.
Thank you so much, Julian.
And thanks for coming down to the Energy Studio.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to bringing more interviews from COP28 in the coming days.